Hello and welcome to our webinar on Reconnecting with Nature. I'm Trish McClellan and I'm joined by my colleague Mary Jackson. We're both non-practicing solicitors and Mary is also a qualified counsellor. And we have been with LawCare, the charity that supports and promotes good mental health and well-being in the legal sector for several years now. And during that time, we've engaged with numerous legal professionals about how the culture and practice of law impacts their well-being. And the content for this webinar is inspired by the theme of this year's Mental Health Awareness Week, which runs, as I'm sure you're aware, from the 10th to the 16th of May. And the theme is nature and the environment. And it seems particularly appropriate this year of all years, as we finally put that winter behind us and we emerge into spring and hopefully into the summer with greater freedom than we've been able to enjoy this past year or so. So we're going to talk about really what health and well-being is and how the culture and practice of law has the potential to impact our health and well-being. And we're also going to look at the positive evidence there is to support how nature and connecting with nature has the potential to improve our mental health. So just to give it all some context, looking at the definition for health, and our preferred definition is this one from the World Health Organization, which has very much stood the test of time. It actually hasn't changed since 1948. And it's very holistic. It's looking at health being far more, being bigger and better than merely just not being ill. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And of course, we recognize there are many dimensions to our health, and they all have a part to play in how well or unwell we feel. Our emotional health, our physical health, our financial well-being. But what we're focusing on mainly during this webinar is the environmental dimension to our health. And as I mentioned, during our time with LawCare, Mary and I have engaged with numerous legal professionals and discussed with them, and they've confided in us about how the legal environment and the delivery and the expectations of them in the legal profession impact on their well-being. And we recognize that the legal sector attracts very high achieving individuals with high expectations of themselves and their peers. Looking a little bit more closely about the mindset, the kind of personality traits that are very, very common in many of us attracted to this sector. We're often very careful, very prudent. We like to take careful, considered actions and decisions. We're trained, almost hardwired, to look for risk, to identify potential problems that may come up the line and look for worst case scenarios. And that can be quite useful in legal work, but does have the potential to impact quite negatively on our health, on our well-being, especially as the high standards expected in the sector, the regulatory framework, mean that we're very fearful of making mistakes. And it almost feeds those perfectionist traits. And many of us will be familiar with that washing machine brain, that tendency to ruminate and dwell on things and think things through to the nth degree. And that makes for quite a toxic mix, especially when combined with environmental factors which prevail in the legal sector. Those long working hours, those billing targets, they drive, they feed those perfectionists, those competitive traits. And that 24/7 culture, that kind of expectation that we can never be off duty. There are high expectations demanded of us from all directions, from our clients, from our managers, as I mentioned earlier, from the regulatory framework. And that leads and adds to that whole belief, that whole stigma about the fact that we shouldn't concede to any weakness. We expect ourselves not to make any mistakes. Ever more difficult, really, in the current climate when our access to support and supervision is more challenging. We've certainly seen that coming through our support channels, that accessibility to ready support, readily available support and supervision is more challenging. And although we're trained to in the law and how to deliver it, we actually aren't, there isn't much time devoted to training us in how to cope with the demands of challenging clients. And the whole language, the whole vocabulary around talking about our emotions doesn't come easily to us, to many of us in this sector. And those combination of factors for the personality traits combined with the environmental factors almost makes for the perfect storm to worsen our mental health condition, the mental health conditions of those of us in the sector.
So Trish has just set the scene about how important it is to look after your mental health as a lawyer. And what we're encouraging through this webinar is we're encouraging you to think about how you think as a lawyer and how you think as a human being as well, away from law, and your emotions and how you deal with your emotions, because really they're two sides of the same coin. Now, a review was carried out by Mind. Mind, I think I'm right in saying, is the oldest charity that deals with mental health awareness raising in the UK. And they carried out a review, Paul Farmer being the CEO and Lord Dennis Stevenson, who himself is a great campaigner for the recognition of mental health and poor mental health. He himself suffers from depression. And they came up with this idea of 6 mental health core standards that should be in every employer's notebook, if you like. So the first one is to produce, implement, and communicate some kind of a plan about the importance of mental health. Then to raise and develop mental health awareness among employees and encourage open conversations. Get away from that stigma that Trish talked about. Open conversations about the importance of mental health and what support there is available when employees are struggling. And ensure that employees have good working conditions and that they are able to have a healthy life-work balance. Even more important now that so many of us are working from home, and that there are opportunities for self-development, and that there is good, effective people management. As Trish said, so often we hear about a lack of supervision, particularly from the younger lawyers who are afraid to lift the phone to their principal or their line manager or their team leader for fear of disturbing them, but they need that ongoing managing and supervision. And that this isn't just a tick box, but that routinely it is part and parcel of the employer's desire to monitor and check on the mental health and good well-being of their employees. And we at LawCare, we use this slide in just about every presentation that we give. And we've pinched it from what's called the New Economics Foundation. And they are 5 simple steps to improve your mental health and well-being. And let's pick out the word connect as the first one. We've surely all come to value and appreciate the importance of real connection with family and friends, those we love, throughout this terrible year of the global pandemic. We're now connecting with you via a screen, but it's a whole lot better than not connecting at all. Being active, we're going to talk a lot in this webinar about the importance of getting outside, of being physically active to help with your mental health and well-being. Keeping learning, well, lawyers do that every day, and we hope after our webinar that you will have learned something new about the value of reconnecting with nature. Giving, well, we're in a giving profession where we give advice, we give support, and giving is good too for your mental health. That old adage about do good, feel good. And then the idea of taking notice, what I like to call mindfulness. And later on in the webinar, I'll be taking you on a mindful walk to really pay attention to what's going on around you and inside your mind. Because what flows through the brain sculpts the mind. So everything that you experience, feel, think, all goes towards developing your mind. And the focus today is on the benefits of nature, of reconnecting with nature. But there are plenty more ideas to explore on our website, for example. And the first one is the concept about being grateful. Maybe writing down 3 things every day that you are thankful for. They needn't be very grand, they can be very simple, but it has been shown that that has the ability to rewire the brain towards a more positive mindset. We know that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is very popular among our lawyers. Now, we don't recommend one therapy over another here at LawCare, but we know that lawyers seem to particularly like that approach. And then mindfulness, as I've explained, more to tell you about that later. So this is the main theme of today's webinar, the reconnection with nature, with the environment, and the benefits that it bestows to both our physical and, more important than ever, our mental health. And let me take you back to 1883, when 3 visionaries, including Octavia Hill, decided that they would form a new charity, one that we've all grown to know and love, the National Trust. And these are the words that she said, and the National Trust have reproduced them in its new book for this year. We all want quiet. We all want beauty, and we all need space. And unless we have it, we cannot reach that sense of quiet in which whispers of better things come to us gently. So here we have 2 acronyms, the NHS, so familiar to all of us, the incredible work that they've been doing to keep us all healthy and well this year in particular, or indeed another way, the Natural Health Service. This book, written by a young journalist, Isabel Hardman, who herself struggles with depression. And the whole thesis of the book is how getting out into nature can really help mend your mind, improve your mental health. My goodness, how things have changed. Once upon a time, we were hunter-gatherers. We probably lived in caves or maybe forests or maybe by the sea. But one thing is sure, we lived outdoors, or we were in a cave looking at the great outdoors, looking at nature, living among nature. And now the majority of the world's population, where do we live? Well, in concrete jungles in cities. And that, of course, you'll recognize, I'm sure, that is the skyscape of London. A concrete jungle, as I've just said. London has one very beneficial idea behind it all. Whoever planned London managed to hold on to them. It's green lungs, it's parks. And it's shown that we humans, we're actually hardwired to feel at peace in the countryside, to feel at peace when we look at green space or we walk in parks or in a forest or whatever. Perhaps because we were once very much part of nature. But when we get to cities, I don't know about you, but when you arrive at an airport or a big train station, you have that sense immediately of confusion and tiredness because the brain takes longer to process its new surroundings when it's away from green space. And there's actually a word for that. Biophilia it is. So there you are. Now, we're going to be talking to you about the importance of getting outside, getting back in touch with nature. And so we've chosen this slide and called it Exercise. It's a no-brainer. Look at your brain. Now, there you are sitting at your desk. And that's what it looks like when you're sitting quietly at your desk in your home. But look what happens after a 20-minute walk. The whole brain lights up. And there are proven cognitive benefits. Now, being lawyers, you're cerebral creatures. Your biggest asset is surely your brain. So, neuroscience, the science that studies our brain, informs us that our hippocampus is the area of the brain that can actually grow. And luckily for us lawyers, that's the seat of learning and memory. But it's also the area of the brain that shrinks, that gets smaller when we suffer from mental illness such as depression or acute anxiety. But the good news is that with physical activity, with exercise, this can help with the production of serotonin, BDNF, which is a protein fluid that flows through the brain, and endorphins. And all of those we put together and we call them the feel-good hormones. So the brain is actually capable of growing new cells, a process known as neurogenesis. And a further benefit is it's thought that this can reduce the risk of developing dementia, physical exercise.
I certainly don't need any convincing about the therapeutic value of walking. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't head out each and every day, rain, hail, snow, shine. And I really just feel the huge benefit attached to that opportunity to reprocess, to recalibrate, to regain perspective. But I think it's fair to say that the Danish theologian puts it far better than I can. Søren Kierkegaard's words, "Every day I walk myself into a state of well-being and walk away from every illness. I have walked into my best thoughts, and I know of no thought so burdensome that one cannot walk away from it. But by sitting still, and the more one sits still, the closer one comes to feeling ill. If one just keeps on walking, everything will be all right." Even a walking app in Denmark named after him, apparently. As well as being lucky enough these days to live with an abundance of green space nearby, I grew up on the coast, and I just find even that image of the shore so relaxing. Just a lovely image of someone gathering their thoughts, wandering along that sand with the waves lapping behind him. Just lovely. And who could fail to be moved, not to have been moved, by the inspirational efforts of the late Sir Tom Moore, walking laps of his garden and raising millions for the NHS in the process. Truly inspirational. And I'm now going to hand you over to Mary, who's going to take us through the mindful walk that she mentioned earlier.
Okay. So I wish I could whisk you all away and take you to the seashore or to a forest or to a woods, but I can't. But I want in this short interlude to give you an opportunity to consider how to take a mindful walk. And it starts with the word stop, if that doesn't sound too strange. So you're getting ready for your walk. Stop, take a few deep breaths, deeper, slower breaths than usual. Observe where you are, and then you're going to go off on your walk. You're going to proceed. So what we're going to do in this walk is really pay attention mindfully to what is going on around us without judgment. And we're going to do that by engaging with 4 of our 5 senses. So the first one, your visual sense, your sense of sight. So as you walk along, I encourage you to look around you as though it's for the first time. What can you see? Buildings, seashore, forest, park? What can you really see? And imagine you're seeing it for the first time. Then moving on to hearing, to our ears. What can you hear? Really listen for sounds. Maybe you can hear the sound of traffic if you're doing a city walk. Maybe you can hear the sound of the wind through the trees, perhaps distant music, maybe a dog barking or distant voices. What can you hear? Really engage with your hearing. And then the third sense, and the most overlooked, our olfactory sense, our sense of smell. And you will know that your nose is part of your brain, and it all links back to your limbic part of the brain, to where memory and emotions are held. So what can you smell on this walk? Maybe you can smell the ozone if you're lucky enough to be by the sea. Maybe you can smell not so good petrol or diesel fumes. Maybe it's May and you can smell blossom, or you're in woods and you can smell bluebells. So 3 senses. And then finally, the sense of touch. So no doubt you've chosen a warm jumper or maybe a Mac or Wellingtons, trainers, whatever. How do your clothes feel against your skin? Warm, chilly, cozy? Maybe you've never really thought about the clothes that you put on to take a walk, but really experience that sense of texture against your skin. So you've engaged with 4 of your senses. And the last thing to invite you to do is to bring your attention to how you are actually breathing on this walk. And breathe a little bit more slowly and a little bit more deeply. I've put on the slide what's called square breathing, and that's the idea of inhaling for a count of 4, little pause for a count of 4, exhale for 4, another little pause for 4. And that has a way of slowing you down and calming you down and chasing away that stress response that is so common. And if you want to explore more and find out more about the whole idea and concept of mindfulness, we now are partnered with the Mindfulness in Law group. They meet once a month, usually at 6:30 for 45 minutes, and you will end your day feeling resourced and recharged. And it's all free. Have a look at our website for more information.
Thank you, Mary. That was lovely, very relaxing. So we also just wanted to share with you some images from our team of the way they choose to connect with nature. This is Angus, one of our volunteers, a keen sailor and fisherman. He loves to be near the water. And then we have Jackie, again, one of our volunteers and also a mindfulness teacher, who said she could have shared literally thousands of images with her. She says she feels the need to get out is almost a visceral need with her. And the images we've selected from the numerous on offer to share with you of her camping with friends, and also on her allotment, where you can see a huge wide smile on her face as she connects with nature. And this is Anna from our staff team, who recently took up running. And really quite an honest quote that I don't love running, but I do it because of how I feel after I've done it. Someone once told me it doesn't have to be fast, it doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to happen. And she's recognizing that afterwards she feels awake, energized, and really appreciative of how that hot shower feels on her skin. And lastly, a lovely beaming image of Joyce, one of our volunteers from Scotland, at Glencoe. And again, saying very, very honestly that climbing hills and mountains can be tough, but my word, it makes you smile when you get there. And doesn't it just? You can see how happy she is there in that picture.
Such lovely images from our volunteers. They really make me smile. And now a little bit about the importance of, as the song says, letting sunshine into your life. So why is sunshine so important? Well, where the light gets in. Sunlight hits the skin or the back of the eye, the retina. And what happens? It releases that happy hormone I've already mentioned, known as serotonin. And there's plenty of ongoing research, but there seems to be a definite link between serotonin and better mood, an uplift in mood. And perhaps you've come across over time the concept of seasonal affective disorder, what is known as SAD. We in the Northern Hemisphere seem to be afflicted by that more than most, perhaps because there is so little sunlight during the months of November to March. And this can lead to a form of seasonally related depression. So it's very important to get out into the sun, no matter what the weather's like or how much there is of it. And the reason for that is also that sunlight builds up vitamin D in the body, and that is very crucial, really, for immunity. So important during these days of the global pandemic, when we are aware night after night of the importance of keeping healthy. So our question to you is, do you get outdoors every day, even for just a few minutes? Are you able to take a few minutes exercise? And also, we can't overlook that lovely colourful plate, like a rainbow, the importance of good diet. One of the strap lines that our communications manager, Gemma, came up with for Mental Health Awareness Week this year is reclaim the lunch hour. And it would seem that the majority of us at 1 o'clock, the traditional lunchtime, do everything except spend an hour eating our lunch. In fact, the average lunch break in the UK is between 7 and 31 minutes, so not a lunch hour at all. And we would say to you, take a break, have a pause, and try and get outside. If the sun is shining, go and eat your sandwich or have your coffee outdoors if you can.
And Emma Mitchell from the Wild Remedy sharing with us the beneficial effects to her mental health in getting outside, even if it's only for a very brief period, even if she doesn't feel like it. She recognizes the benefits of persuading herself to go and do it. I know that if I force myself up from the sofa, then the gloom can lift a little. And if I step outside and walk in the wood behind the cottage, The dreich thoughts may not leave entirely, but they certainly retreat to the wings. I've now realized how beneficial being in a green place can be, even if only for 5 or 10 minutes. For me, taking a daily walk among plants and trees is as medicinal as any talking cure or pharmaceutical. And again, recognizing there that we are all very, very limited sometimes in the amount of time that's available to us, but surely we can all spare 5 or 10 minutes to get outside every day and hopefully reap the benefits of that. Just a lovely uplifting image of hopefully what we can expect to look forward to as we get into summer and blue skies and sunshine and green leaves and blossom. Just knowing how that feels on our skin as we emerge from lockdown. And recognizing too that there is good, robust data to support the positive impact that nature can have on mental health and well-being. Touching firstly on 2007 study from the Joint University of Madrid and Norwegian University of Life Sciences, showing that simply seeing natural landscapes can speed up recovery from stress or mental fatigue, just seeing images. And closer to home, 2017 University of Exeter study, recognizing that the presence of vegetation in an urban landscape diminishes levels of anxiety and depression and perceived stress levels of city dwellers. And that same raft of work showing that time spent outdoors alleviates low mood. So certainly worth doing. But we recognize that although we may try our very best, there may be good reasons why one day or more than a day at a time, we just can't get outside. So an interesting point made by Isabel Hardman in the Natural Health Service book that Mary mentioned earlier, that even looking outside and trying to connect from indoors with that outside space has beneficial effects. The interplay between outside and inside space, the built and the natural environment, is an important one. Sheltered inside, it helps to be reminded by a seasonal and changing scene outside that you're still part of a living world. Look out of the window from a sheltered place at the branch of a tree moving in the wind. Only this morning, I was making a quick cup of tea between meetings, and I was just watching, just for a few minutes, the birds feeding in the garden. And it really is just, it does make you feel instantly better, just recognizing nature and what's going on, and, just wondering really what process is being delivered. The seasons are just fascinating for me to watch, and the natural world. So that certainly resonates with me, that occasionally, if we really just can't get outside, looking out of the window and connecting with nature that way. And these words resonate too from Jack Cornfield, that really often we're guilty of just being too busy, and that can make us lose connection with ourselves and certainly with one another. When we get too caught up in the busyness of the world, we lose connection with one another and ourselves, and that can't be good. And of course, there are ways and means of doing that will appeal to us to a lesser or greater degree. Some of you will be doing and thinking of doing really exciting things like forest bathing, wild swimming, abseiling. Some of us are content just to go for a walk. But there really is something for everyone. Just gardening, looking at the night sky from your door, making a nature table. So do look out during Mental Health Awareness Week for us on social media. Follow us if you can, and look out for our new top tips and podcasts, looking at some new suggestions for us to engage with nature, and some lovely eye-catching images that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Mary has also selected a lovely poem to share with us. And we both remember learning this in primary school, which we concede was a few years ago, but we can still remember huge rafts from it. And I'm just going to read the words to you and hope that you find them as meaningful as we do. So W.H. Davis, Leisure, from 1911. What is this life if full of care we have no time to stand and stare? No time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows. No time to see when woods we pass where squirrels hide their nuts in grass. No time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like skies at night. No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet, how they can dance. No time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile her eyes began. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. Just lovely, lovely words. And really, our firm belief is that the exacting standards demanded of us in this sector are much more likely to be capable of being delivered if we look after our health. Then we are much more likely to be able to deliver that healthy justice. But it does require healthy lawyers to do so. We're just also going to share this clip with you of what awaits us when we do venture outside. So much to see. So we really would encourage you, wherever possible, to get out there, reconnect with nature and use its restorative effects to your benefit. Just a reminder to make an extra effort perhaps during Mental Health Awareness Week this year, bearing in mind the theme, to try to use it as an opportunity to draw a line in the sand and say, yes, I can see the benefits of engaging with nature. I can see the benefits of getting away from my desk and taking a proper break, and expect that it will have a beneficial effect on my well-being. We do hope you found that useful and interesting. Please do get in touch with us if you have any feedback, or if you would be interested in any information on aspects of our service. And we do hope to be able to be in a position to share with you shortly information and data from our Life in the Law study that closed earlier in the year, and use that data to, which hopefully will inform us more about how the practice and culture of law impacts our well-being, and hopefully use that data to drive any change. Thank you so much.